You know, we are live at CPAC today over at the National Harbor where conservatives are gathering. It is a place where conservatives come to talk to one another and exchange ideas. And you meet the most interesting people here. Ken Klukowski is a constitutional lawyer on faculty at Liberty University School of Law. He's also the author of a best-selling book called Resurgent, How Constitutional Conservatism Can Save America. And he joins us now here on the Radio Row at CPAC. Ken, how are you?
Brian, I'm doing great. Great to be with you and Larry.
All right. You know, I wanted to talk to you because we often on this program talk about the things we think are the extra constitutional activities of this particular administration. There are a couple things that come to mind here. Number one, we've talked about it endlessly on this show, how the Obama administration, when they disagree with a law, they just simply choose not to enforce it. And then the other thing that has come up recently was a court ruling that said that people who were appointed during recess by the president to the National Labor Relations Board, the court said those recess appointments are invalid. It's going to be challenged all the way to the Supreme Court. Let's talk about these two things.
Well, absolutely. It's what we have going on. Let's go straight to the recess appointment first. The Constitution specifies that the president shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed. And we have seen this president violate that in unprecedented ways that no president has. You mentioned the recess appointments as a great example of that. And I actually covered that for Breitbart News, wrote on that at the time, and I practice constitutional law. And here it was a bridge too far for the court. Now, ironically, it looks like some presidents on both parties might have been overstepping constitutional bounds in other aspects of this issue over the past 30 years. But because this president became the first one to just declare when the Senate is in recess, even though they said they're in session, it finally forced for the first time this issue to go to a court, where a court got into the original meaning of the Constitution. And so all of these have been stopped, first of all. Now the NLRB, in another lawless action, the National Labor Relations Board, is continuing to act as if it is in office, despite the fact that a court
it's still a legitimate board.
That's exactly right.
Even though the courts have said they are not.
Even though the courts have said they are not. I think this will go to the U.S. Supreme Court probably in the fall, maybe the winter. And I think we're going to have actually a historical ruling on this, which will do a lot to restore the separation of powers.
About the immigration though issue, because this is a case where the president has said, I disagree with the current immigration laws. These laws were passed by Congress, signed into law by a previous president. He doesn't agree with them, so he tells his Department of Justice, or they come with the policy of, we're just not going to enforce them. We're going to ignore those laws with which we disagree.
Yeah, and I covered that case for Breitbart News as well, and I think the Supreme Court got that issue wrong in the Arizona immigration case when the question was preemption. Everyone acknowledges under the Constitution's Supremacy Clause, whenever federal law validly conflicts with state law,
right,
the federal law trumps. But here it wasn't a law. It was a president ignoring the law and just issuing a directive to his subordinates saying, don't enforce this anymore. We have that going on with the DREAM Act, while we also had on the second track this conflict with Arizona, but they all come together. It's a president who just does what he wants to do no matter what the words of the laws on the books are, the laws that were approved by Congress pursuant to the Constitution.
Ken Klukowski is our guest. He's on faculty at Liberty University, constitutional lawyer, and you're also an author. Your co-author, Ken Blackwell, and you put out a book. I remember talking to you about this a few years ago. The book was The Blueprint, Obama's Plan to Subvert the Constitution. And I mean, you're a prophet, sir. I mean, what kind of stuff are we seeing now from this president? He seems to be on steroids now that he doesn't have to worry about running for re-election.
Well, you know, you never want to say I told you so because it doesn't sound nice. And I'll say when that book came out, when The Blueprint came out, it was in the first year of the Obama administration, and people's reaction was, aren't you being a little hard on the guy?
Yeah.
And we're like, get past the sound bites. Have you actually looked at the details of what he's proposing? He's going to fundamentally transform the United States like he promised he would 5 days before the 2008 election. And that's exactly what we're seeing now. I think it's time to update the blueprint because it's going from projecting what he would do to saying, okay, this is what he has done. Now let's talk about what he's going to do next because he's not done yet.
Well, and aren't there some issues here in terms of how the Supreme Court is sort of helping that along? I mean, I know you wrote extensively after the Obamacare decision came down.
I was with the lawyers on that case.
Right, and you actually wrote one of the briefs on behalf of Florida, I think it was, right? Or
I was writing on behalf of members of Congress.
Thank you. And, I mean, we're looking at a completely new Supreme Court. We assume that Ginsburg is not going to make it through the Obama administration.
The rumor is she'll retire in 2015.
That'll be a liberal for a liberal, though.
Yes.
What can we anticipate from the Roberts Court as it currently stands in terms of some of these constitutional issues that are going to come forward? And also, is Obamacare done constitutionally? I mean, I know we had the first fight, and it ended up being over the individual mandate and whether it was a tax or not. But are there other avenues that states can take on Obamacare? 2
points in reverse order. First of all, in terms of knocking Obamacare out in its entirety, there's a couple other cases out there, but they don't have. They face such long odds that really the chance we had was in NFIB. If you're not going to win John Roberts over on that, you're not going to win him over on anything. However, on these smaller issues, like the HHS mandate, which is only a regulation.
This is the mandate for birth control.
Abortion-related services, etc. That is so clearly a violation, not just of the Constitution, but of a different federal law, the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, that I'm entirely confident that will get struck down. That'll probably be to the court, I'd say, in about 9 months from now, and there's a couple smaller issues going on as well that I think could also be knocked down. Now, Liberty University is also challenging another major part of the law, the employer mandate, in a lawsuit that's before the Fourth Circuit Federal Appeals Court right now. But again, I mean, and it's a great fight, but realistically speaking, it could go either way. You know, I want to see it go the right way, but we'll see what the courts do.
Very quickly, Ted Cruz, a lot of questions about whether or not he can run for the presidency because he was born in Canada.
Yeah, and he's a superstar here at CPAC. Everyone's talking about it.
Oh, as well they should be, and he's probably, you want to talk about constitutional lawyers.
Very quickly on this one.
Absolutely. Yes, it's an open, it's a legal debate right now among scholars, but the smart money would be to say because he was born a U.S. citizen to an American citizen, even though it was in Canada, that he is, yes, eligible to run for president.
All right.
There you go. Ken Klukowski, thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy your CPAC experience.
Yeah. Thanks for dropping by early in the morning. Appreciate it.
It's 6:40.